Welcome to the Tech Talks Daily Podcast, where you can learn and be inspired by real-world examples of how technology is transforming businesses and reshaping industries in a language everyone can understand. Here is your host, Neil C. Hughes.
Welcome back to the Tech Talks Daily Podcast. Now, there are a few things that I keep reading about at the moment. One, traditional job roles are disappearing. But two, there are thousands of new emerging job roles fit for a digital age that are currently sitting empty because of a skills shortage. And three, kids are losing interest in STEM subjects or struggling to see the value in STEM subjects, but those skills could pave the way for a lucrative career. And I find myself scratching my head thinking, hey, if we all did the math here, we could solve a lot of these problems. And speaking of math, did you know that April is Math Awareness Month, or Maths Awareness Group to my fellow Brit listeners? And a company called Domino Data Lab is releasing a kids' book to help educate and inspire parents and kids about careers in data science. And today's guest is Ryan Kelly, who was inspired to create the book after trying to explain to his own daughter exactly what his job entailed and what data science is. For me, it's a great story in itself, so buckle up and hold on tight as I beam your ears all the way to the US so we can speak with Ryan Kelly about all this and much more. So a massive warm welcome to the show, Ryan. Can you tell the listeners a little about who you are and what you do?
Yeah, well, thanks for having me, Neil. So I like to start off and say I'm a recovering attorney, and I know in your neck of the woods, Neil, I think that would be a barrister if I'm right, to use the local vernacular. Recovering attorney turned marketer, and I found my passion scaling B2B tech firms. And a couple of weeks ago, I became a children's book author. So excited to talk with you about that today.
Incredibly cool. And for people listening and hearing about you guys for the first time, Domino Data Lab is an enterprise data science management platform trusted by over 20% of the Fortune 100. And it's incredibly cool, but what I'd love to do is take you back in time and ask you to set the scene and tell the listeners hearing about you for the first time a little bit more about the type of problems that you initially set out to solve for your customers.
Yeah, well, taking a back step here, the world really does run on models, and models are also sometimes known as algorithms, but they are the output of what a data scientist essentially creates, or what a data science team creates. And as individuals and as consumers, we interact with models in the real world on a daily basis, from what Netflix is showing when you log on and turn on your TV, to what songs Spotify's are about to play, to prices for airline tickets, for decisions being made around insurance. So there used to be an old saying that software is eating the world, and we truly believe that that's now changed, and the next evolution is models are running the world right now. So yeah, there's a lot that goes into it, but we at Domino essentially are trying to fulfill all the promises that data science has within Fortune 100, Fortune 1000 organizations, and really enabling the data science team to make predictive automated decisions that are going to help those companies thrive in today's competitive environment.
And it's so interesting that all the examples you provided there, because we're all surrounded by these models, like you say, in Netflix, Amazon, Spotify, but nobody really knows how that stuff really works, or very few people. Maybe a lot of people listening to this podcast, but outside of that, nobody really knows. And I think we take that technology for granted. And correct me if I'm wrong, because I'm a words guy rather than a numbers guy, but I believe that April is maths aware, or is it Math Awareness Group or Maths Awareness?
Yeah, okay, I think I think you think either way works really. So yeah, April is Math Awareness Month, and we're using this as a opportunity to get kids more interested in STEM, and to help parents with that challenge. Because research has shown time and time again that if you delay exposing a child into the sort of STEM environment until high school or even until college, they're just at like this massive disadvantage to stick with it. And it starts to feel forced and super foreign. And look, I was never great at math or science, and that was my path, right? And when I was a poli-sci major in college and ended up taking like geology, which was essentially called rocks for jocks to get, one of my science class credits to get my bachelor's degree. And I really, really wish that I had also been introduced to STEM at a much, much younger age. And it's a big reason why I wrote the book, Florence, the Data Scientist and Her Magical Bookmobile, because I think it's just one way to get kids interested in this incredible field at a much earlier age.
And I'm so glad you brought that up because, like you said, there is a lack of skills at the moment, and so many jobs are sitting unfilled. And we do need to approach this problem differently. And Domino is releasing that kids' book to help educate and inspire parents and kids everywhere about careers in data science. But can you tell me a little bit more about the story behind the book and the inspiration and why you wrote it?
Yeah, so we at Domino have this annual project that's called a hackathon, where basically the whole company takes a big step away from their day job and collaborates on unique problems or challenges to the business. And I had actually only started 4 weeks before this first hackathon. And at Domino Data Lab, like I mentioned, Neil, I'm a recovering attorney. I'm a marketer. I'm not a data scientist. When I would tell my parents or even my wife, like, hey, I'm going to work at Domino, what do they do? It's like, no, they sell software to data scientists. It's like, you almost need to break down each word in that sentence. So as I was thinking, like, what would be a really cool thing to do for a hackathon or this Team Week project? I had just had my own daughter 18 months before. And I was like, man, it must be so hard if I'm struggling to describe what a data scientist is to my friends and family. How the hell is a parent describing what they do to their own child? And, I'm like, what if we wrote a children's book? So, worked with a cross-functional team of parents and former data scientists. We actually came in third place for the company-wide hackathon project. So we didn't even win, it wasn't even the idea that got the most votes. But at the end of it, people really wanted more and they wanted to make it a real thing. So I just ran with it. And 7 months later, here we are now with the finished product, which I'm super, super excited about.
I would imagine it's incredibly difficult approaching a children's book. It's so much different to how you would approach any other form of writing a book. But what were your biggest takeaways from the experience? What did you learn from it all?
Neil, like most things in life that are worth doing, they're challenging and they're hard, and you just need to like stick with it, right? And I certainly wasn't a children's book author before this, and still even feel weird saying that I published one and authored one, but I'm a big believer in not necessarily reinventing the wheel, right? And who else could I go to in my network who's maybe published books previously? And actually ended up going to law school with a buddy who wrote a book that I had no idea about. So he pointed me in some of the right directions, but it was super important to work with actual data scientists who were parents who had gone through some of these same struggles, right? And then also partner with folks like Murney, who did all the beautiful illustrations in the book, who had worked and illustrated dozens of books before mine, right? And she helped guide me through the process. And then we also partnered with the National Teachers Science Association to develop a lesson plan that goes along with the book, so we can try to get it into classrooms for teachers, right? So even though my name's on there as an author, it's truly a group, and there's a whole team behind this effort that made it possible.
Cool. And if we've got any parents or business leaders or decision makers or teachers that are listening to this podcast today that maybe sat on the fence or just need to know a little bit more about it, why do you think it's so important to start an interest in STEM so early on?
At the end of the day, Neil, I this is going to sound funny. I'm going to go back on my words here. I didn't necessarily just write this book to get kids interested in data science or even in STEM. I wrote it because I think this world needs more problem solvers, right?
Yeah.
And I think data science and STEM helps children get that foundational skill set when it comes to critical thinking and how to approach the problems that this world has. Because frankly, there's a lot of them out there, Neil, and we just need that next generation excited, willing, and able to step up to try to solve some of these massively complicated challenges that we're facing today.
I completely agree with you on that. And despite, as both knowing this and quite passionate and excited about it and bringing more problem solvers into the world, we do see a lot of doom and gloom in the media and a lot of misinformation. So I'm curious, are there any myths about data science that you might have read or just frustrate you that you can lay to rest once and for all today?
I think this one will be interesting for anyone who's maybe in the field or in engineering or in tech. And there's actually this massive misconception that because models involve code and data, you can treat them the same way as you treat software. And it's very, very, very different. And we see a lot of companies fail on their approach to become more model driven because they don't recognize this, right? They don't recognize this fallacy that models are very different. They're this like completely new asset that a company has. And they're almost more so this like living, breathing organism. And if you don't treat them different than software, the company is just not going to succeed with trying to become more model driven, which, all of the businesses that are, quote unquote, winning today are model driven at their heart. So that's the biggest misconception that I sort of see around data science.
Love that. And what would be the key takeaway that you'd want any parents or indeed kids thinking about a career or pursuing a career in data science today? What would you love them to walk away with after reading your book or listening to this conversation today?
I think as a parent myself, who frankly, like, math and science were not my strongest subjects growing up, right? I think there's a lot of apprehension and hesitancy to educate and introduce STEM to your kids because there's a little bit of an uncomfort about like, well, I don't even know this subject that well, right? Like, how am I going to introduce my kid to this, right? And I think that's the wrong approach. And it's all about like, just meet them on their level. Get creative, embrace your inner kid, and just like tie anything back that is around these. Like, I'll give you an example, Neil. My daughter, she's only shy of 2 years old now. She loves the book. She loves the repetition pattern in the book, but she also just loves to tinker with these little like nuts and bolts of toys and taking them in and out and locks and latches, right? And like, how do you introduce STEM when you're like out on a walk, like in a park, like in the real world, right? And even describe like, okay, hey, here are shadows. Like, let's explore shadows and how do shadows work, right? So I would say, like, just like, don't be scared, get on their level, get creative, and just start doing it, right? And just make the leap.
Oh man, I think you've just officially nominated yourself as Cool Dad of the Year award there. It's incredibly cool what you said.
Well, I that was one of the big reasons why I wrote the book, right? Because I need those brownie points against my wife, who mom is certainly the favorite. I'm essentially known as mom's friend, I think, to my daughter right now. So yeah, but.
Love that. And you have been on an incredible journey in tech. And a question I always like to ask my guests, is there any particular song that has inspired them in the past, helped them throughout their career, or just helps them get their head in the zone before going on stage or starting work? Is there a particular song that stands out to you?
This is a super interesting question. And I would say, if I had to go back, when I was finishing law school, I think this album came out. It was maybe maybe second year law school summer, but Daft Punk released their sort of Random Access album, which went on and did wonders. And I actually have that album in my apartment as art, like up in the wall, and I have it framed because I loved it so much. And there's a song on that. There's the whole album's great, but the Get Lucky single on that, I think always helps put me in the right head, in the right mood space. And they were like, Daft Punk was together for like 28 years, which is crazy, right? Like, who's together for that long? And when you think of tech, and they have the helmets, and they have this funky, like, robotic, like, electronic vibe, but I'm a big fan of those guys, and it's incredibly unfortunate that they decided to call it quits and break up last year. So yeah, that was a bummer.
Incredibly cool choice, though. And I'll be adding that to the Tech Talks Daily Spotify playlist as well, so other people can hear that or discover it if they haven't already, which I'm sure they have. But before I let you go, though, can you remind listeners of where they can find a copy of that book, and also contact your team if they've got any questions, or find out more information about Domino Data Lab?
Yeah, well, I mean, the book's available wherever books are sold online. So you can get it on, Amazon.com. Just type in Florence the Data Scientist, enter Magical Bookmobile, and that'll pop right up. You can also go to dominodatalab.com. There's a banner on the site that directs to a free digital ebook. So if you want the hardcover copy, best place to go is to Amazon. If you want to grab the digital ebook to literally read to your kids tonight when you listen to this pod, feel free to go to the Domino website. And any questions, you can just email Florence at dominodatalab.com. So that's where people should go to check it out.
Well, there's so much I've loved about chatting with you today. In particular, of course, not just the technology and the side of things there, but about bringing new problem solvers into the world, and how the inspiration around creating that book just arrived after trying to explain to your own daughter what exactly your job entails and what data science is. It's incredibly cool how it all formed and took shape, especially as a recovering attorney, as you said. It's a great story. But more than anything, thanks for joining me today.
Thanks so much, Neil. Appreciate it.
Yes, there is a huge shortage of data scientists. But I love how Domino is helping to start education earlier and understand what data science is. I mean, after all, we are all surrounded by data science everywhere we look, from the TV and movies that Netflix suggests, the purchases that Amazon suggests, and the Spotify or Apple Music playlists that are put in front of us. But helping kids understand what data science actually is, and help unlock its power, and help people understand what's possible through data science, that's something that I think we could all be doing much better to promote to adults and kids alike. But over to you. What are your thoughts about all the points in the discussion that we raised today? I'd love to hear how you would tackle this issue, your experiences, and any insights you can offer too. So please keep your questions, comments, pitch us to come on the podcast, Spotify playlist suggestions, whatever it is. Email me, techblogwriter@outlook.com. My website is techblogwriter.co.uk. You can get me on Twitter, LinkedIn, Instagram, etc. at Neil C. Hughes. But that's it for today's episode. I will be here same time, same place tomorrow, lurking like a bad smell in your podcast feed. So thank you for listening. And until next time, don't be a stranger.
Thank you for listening to the Tech Talks Daily Podcast with Neil C. Hughes. Remember, technology works best when it brings people together.